Okay, here we go today. We need to open up our student activity book to page 311 and 312. And as what we're going to do today is we are going to classify quadrilaterals today, okay, and the different types. So, is what we need to do is we need to open up to page 311 and 312 in your student activity book. I'm going to give you 1 second to do that. Go ahead. Now, this lesson, it can be a little frustrating, but if you stick with it, it should work out okay. And so I don't want you to be annoyed if it doesn't kind of work out or it's a little bit of a struggle. Okay. So this is kind of hard, a little bit challenging, but we're going to work through our math activity together. Okay. And so hopefully that will be a help of you. Okay. So let's take a look at, I drew on the board. There we go. Let's take a look at our first one, number 1 here. Okay, our directions say, place a check mark beside every name that describes the figure. So remember, a quadrilateral is a shape that has 4 sides, 4 lines that connect, right? And then they enclose a shape, okay? So if we look at number 1, we have 4 straight lines, segments, and they connect and they fill in and they create a shape. So we do have a quadrilateral. Now, parallelogram. A parallelogram is a shape, a quadrilateral, that has 2 sets of parallel lines. So the opposite sides are parallel. So if we look at this line, wow, I did a terrible drawing. If we take a look, let me highlight. If we take a look at this line and this line, we could see if they continue on forever, they're not going to cross. So those are parallel lines, correct? And if we take a look at this line and this line, they're opposites. Those are also parallel lines. So this shape is also a parallelogram. Okay, let's talk about a rhombus. Is it a rhombus? So a rhombus is a quadrilateral that is also a parallelogram that has all 4 sides the same length. So if we look at this side and we measure this side, we're going to see that they are the same length. And if we measure this side and this side, all sides are going to be the same length. And if you want to, you can pull out a ruler and measure that, but it looks like they're all the same length. So that is a rhombus. Now, let's talk about a rectangle. A rectangle has to have 4 right angles. And if we look right here, this angle right here looks to be obtuse. And this angle looks to be obtuse. So they're not right angles. Remember, a right angle is when we have straight up and down, if I can get it straight up and down, and straight across, right? Like an L, okay? And then we mark it like this, right? Have a square angle. We don't have a square angle here. So this is not a rectangle. And we know that a square is a type of rectangle. So if it can't be a rectangle, it also cannot be a square. So this shape would be a quadrilateral, it would be a parallelogram, and it would be a rhombus. Okay? All right. Let's move on to number 2. I'm going to give you a second, and I want you to try number 2 really quick. Okay? All right. Okay, what did you come up with? So we have 4 sides that enclose. So this is a quadrilateral. We have this line and this line that are parallel. But if we look at this line and this line, they're not parallel because if they keep going, they're going to meet right here. So it's not a parallelogram. If it's not a parallelogram, it can't be a rhombus. And if it's not a parallelogram, it can't be a rectangle. But when we have one set, when we have a quadrilateral, and we have one set of parallel lines, this one and this one, that's when we get what we call a trapezoid. Okay? All right. So, number 3 can be a little bit tricky. I want you to pause the video and I want you to try number 3 together. Or I want you to try number 3 on your own. I'm sorry. Okay? Go ahead and pause and then come back and we'll talk about it. Okay? All right, excuse me. Sorry, I got a little tickle in my throat. I'll have to get me a bottle of water out. So we have this quadrilateral, right? Because we have 4 sides, right? We have 4 sides and they connect. So quadrilateral, you bet. Parallelogram. Do we have 2 sets of parallel lines? Those are parallel. And these ones are parallel. So that gives us a parallelogram. Is it a rhombus? Now remember, a rhombus is a parallelogram that has all the same sides, the same length. So since it is a parallelogram, all we have to do is measure each side. And if they are the same length, then guess what? It is a rhombus. Okay. Oops. Sorry, got a little excited with my thing. Now let's talk about a rectangle. A rectangle is a quadrilateral. It's a quadrilateral that's a parallelogram that has 4 right angles or 4 90-degree angles. So it is also a rectangle. But is it a square? Now remember, a square is a type of rectangle that has 4 sides that are equal. Now we know that this has 4 equal sides because it's a rhombus. So we can go ahead and say that it's a square. So a square, when we look at a square is a quadrilateral. It's also a parallelogram. It's also a rhombus. It's also a rectangle, and it's a square. So we can put it on all 5 shapes. And I know that's a little bit confusing because remember, a square is a type of rectangle. Okay? So let's come down to number 4 because number 4 is really similar to number 3. So we're just going to go through it right quick. We know it's a quadrilateral, 4 sides. This line and this line is parallel. This line and this line is parallel. So we have a, oops, wrong thing. We have a parallelogram. Now, to me, this side and this side do not look the same length. One looks a lot longer. So it is not a rhombus, okay? But if I look right here, all of these look like square angles to me. So a quadrilateral parallelogram with 4 right angles is a rectangle. But is it a square? We already said that this side and this side are different lengths, right? So a square is a type of rectangle with all the same length. So it cannot be a square. Okay? All right. So pause the video. I want you to try number 5 and number 6 and then come back and press start and let's see how you did. Okay? All right. Here's our video for number 5. Okay? We have a quadrilateral. We know that because it's a shape, it's enclosed 4 straight lines. We also have a parallelogram because this line and this line are parallel and this line and this line are parallel. Okay, so two sets of parallel lines. So it's a parallelogram. Are they the same length? Well, this side and this side do not look the same length. One looks a little bit longer to me, so it cannot be a rhombus. Now, is it a rectangle or square? We got to look. Is this a right angle? Is this a right angle? It doesn't look like we have any right angles. So this cannot be a rectangle. And if it's not a rectangle, then it cannot be a square. Okay. Now, let's take a look at number 6, this diamond shape right quick. I want you to envision, and I'm going to try something with my snippet tool, and I don't know if it's going to let me copy. It's not going to let me do that. Okay, we will come back to it. All right, so I just want you to use your envisioning. I want you to think that if you took this shape right here, if you took this shape right here and you could twist it like a clock, if you could rotate it, and if you could rotate it, you're going to notice that this shape and this shape are the same. It's just turned a little bit different. So if they're the same, it's just turned, right? Then we know that this is a quadrilateral, parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle, and square because it's the exact same as this one. It's just spun a little bit, right? It's crooked, if you would say. But if we look at it, we still have right angles, don't we? We still have right angles. We just spun it a little bit, okay? Hopefully you're able to see that pretty easy. All right, now 7, 8, and 9 are a little bit tricky, okay? Let's take a look at 7. Is it a quadrilateral? Does it have 4 sides that close in? It sure does. Does it a parallelogram? No, because we come to points, we can see that they meet. And if it's not a parallelogram, it can't be a rhombus. If it's not a parallelogram, it can't be a rectangle. If it's not a rectangle, it can't be a square. So it's a quadrilateral. So I want you to try number 8 and number 9 and see what you come up with. Go ahead and pause. Okay, with 8 and 9, we can see the same thing. Quadrilateral, not a parallelogram. If it's not a parallelogram, it can't be a rhombus, can't be a rectangle, can't be a square. Same thing with number 9, because none of these lines are parallel to each other. Okay? All right. So we're going to continue practicing this a little bit more. So is what I want you to do is I want you to turn to page 312, and I want you to try to figure out this page the best that you can as your assignment, okay? So I want you to pause this. Is what I'm going to do when you press pause. I'm going to fill it out so that you can check your answers, okay? So go ahead and pause, fill it out, and let's see how you do. Okay, so number 10 says, for each figure, put an X under the description that are always true. Now this is big, always true. So in order to be a quadrilateral, it has to have 4 sides. That's it. Remember, because if we come back down here, this is a quadrilateral, this is a quadrilateral, and they don't have parallel lines, they don't have right angles, they're not the same length. So always true, a quadrilateral has 4 sides. Let's talk about a trapezoid. A trapezoid has 4 sides. Both pair of opposite sides are parallel. That's not true. We only have to have one side, one opposite side, right? So in a parallelogram, I'm going to draw right on this. I have this line. Let me undo that. Change colors. So remember, in a parallelogram, I have this line and this line. That's one set of sides are parallel, and then the other two are not. So, one side. Both pairs of opposite sides are the same length. No. 4 right angles. No. All the sides the same length. Not with a trapezoid. So, let's go to a parallelogram. Parallelogram has to have 4 sides. It also has to have 2 sets of parallel lines. Both pairs of opposite sides the same length. Though, not all sides the same length. So is what we're saying in a trapezoid, or sorry, a parallelogram, is what we're saying that this length in green and this length in green are the same length. And this one in orange and this one in orange are the same length. Because if one was a little bit longer, let's take this one out, and let's take this one out. If this side was longer, if this orange one was longer than this one, then when I made this line, it's not going to be, the green lines will not be parallel anymore. Do you see that? So this side and this side have to be the same length, and this side have to be the same length in order for it to be a parallelogram. Okay, so opposite sides are the same length. No, they do not have to have 4 right angles, and no, not all sides have to be the same length, just the opposite sides. Okay, so let's go to a rhombus. A rhombus has to have 4 sides. It has to be a parallelogram. The opposite sides have to be the same length. They do not have to have right angles, but all the sides have to be the same length. And remember, that makes it just a little bit different than a square, doesn't it? Because a square has 4 right angles. A rectangle, 4 sides. Opposite sides are parallel, parallelogram, right? Opposite sides are the same length. They have to be a parallelogram, okay? And we have 4 right angles. But with a rectangle, they do not have to be the same length, okay? So we know that a square, 4 sides the same length, opposite sides are parallel, opposite sides are the same length, they have to be a parallel line, there has to be 4 right angles, and they have to be the same length, okay? Good job. So, parallelograms, let's take a look at number 11 really quick. We'll make this fast. Parallelograms have all the features of quadrilaterals. So we're going to look at parallelograms, right? And quadrilaterals. So it has all the same features, except we have to add this one and this one. So we're going to say, going to come down here and we are going to say opposite sides are parallel and the same length. Because not all sides, the opposite sides, are the same length. In order for them to be parallel, they have to be the same length, okay? So that takes care of that. Let's take a look at number 12 now. Number 12 says rectangles have, so we're going to look at rectangles have all the same features of parallelograms plus what's something that rectangles have? This guy right here. 4 right angles. So we're going to come in here and we're going to put 4 right angles. Okay. All right. Now, oops, got rid of my X there too. Squares have all the features of quadrilaterals. So now we are going to look at squares and quadrilaterals, right? Except for what? Both pairs opposite sides, same length, 4 right angles, and all sides the same length. Okay, so we're going to put both pairs of opposite sides are parallel and the same length. Four right angles. This is a lot on this one, isn't it? And all sides the same length. Thanks for sticking through that one. That one's tough. All right, so let's go down here to trapezoids. Trapezoids have all the features of quadrilaterals plus what? Well, we don't have it marked, but the only difference is there's only one pair of parallel lines. Okay, I know that was a little bit tricky today. That's all right. It was a little frustrating. This was a little bit hard today. So your math assignment today is to play the math game that I have posted. And if you don't have a printer and can't play the math game, then you can play Salute or a dice game or a multiplication game. All right, you guys have been fantastic. Good luck today, and we'll see you tomorrow.